"You don't need to come tonight. My mom doesn't want you here." My husband's text lit up my screen on the night of my mother-in-law's big housewarming. I stared at it for a long second, then typed back, "Okay, babe." No argument, no begging. If they didn't want me, fine. I'd pay them back in the only language they respected. I opened my banking app, canceled every payment, reversed every transfer tied to that new house. An hour later, my phone started ringing without a single pause. Before we get into how badly that night exploded, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and who you think is right so far, me or them. And if you love real-life stories with twists like this, hit like and subscribe so this channel can keep growing and bringing you more. Anyway, back to that night. A few hours earlier, Nadia had been in her home office, massaging her temples as a row of numbers on her laptop shrank by hundreds of thousands of dollars. With one click, she had just made the final payment on a luxury house in an exclusive neighborhood. The house wasn't for her. It was for her mother-in-law, Rita. Nadia closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair, swallowing the bitter taste in her chest. As a hijab-wearing woman who ran a wildly successful fashion export company, she was used to making decisions worth millions. She had funded factories, negotiated with European brands, and signed contracts in currencies most people only saw on TV. But this decision felt different. It didn't feel like an investment. It felt like ripping out a piece of herself and handing it to someone who despised her. And it had all started 3 months earlier. 3 months ago, her husband Evan had come home with that familiar pleading look on his face. Evan was, in many ways, a good man, gentle, affectionate, not a cheater. But when it came to his mother, he folded like wet paper. That night he sat beside her on the couch, took her hand, and started his usual routine. "Babe, Mom's getting old," he said softly. "Her biggest dream is just to have a decent house to enjoy the rest of her life in." Nadia went quiet on that one word, decent. Their current house was more than comfortable, but for Rita, enough didn't exist. Nothing was ever good enough, especially not Nadia. Rita had never truly accepted her. To Rita, Nadia was just an ordinary girl who'd gotten lucky in business. Instead of being proud that her daughter-in-law owned a booming clothing brand and employed hundreds of people, Rita felt threatened. In her mind, a good wife handed all her income to her husband and his family and kept quiet. Nadia refused. She had built her company from nothing, sewing late into the night, eating instant noodles at her desk. She would help, yes, but not hand over her entire life's work. The only problem was that she loved Evan, and he was her softest spot. "So, what kind of decent house are we talking about?" Nadia finally asked. Evan avoided her eyes. "You know Emerald Heights? Mom's been looking at a place there. The air is really fresh, lots of trees, great security. She's already in love with it." Nadia almost choked. Emerald Heights was one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. Gated, manicured lawns, imported marble everywhere. Those weren't just houses, they were small palaces. "Evan, that price is insane," she said carefully. "We're expanding the business. We can't just throw money at a vanity purchase." He sighed, squeezing her hand. "Please, Nadia, just this once for Mom. I promise, after this, she won't ask for anything else. I'm ashamed, you know. I'm her only son, and I still haven't given her the home she's always dreamed of." And then he pulled out his favorite weapon, guilt. Nadia hated that it worked on her every single time. She imagined Rita finally smiling at her, maybe even saying thank you for once. She imagined being treated like family instead of an outsider with an unlimited credit card. Against her better judgment, Nadia nodded. "Fine. We'll make it happen." That was the day the nightmare quietly began. From that moment on, Nadia handled everything. She met with the realtor, negotiated the price, signed the paperwork. The mortgage went under her name. The down payment, almost $500,000, came straight from her personal savings. Evan and Rita only showed up for the photo ops, posing in front of the half-finished house, choosing wall colors, arguing over which chandelier looked expensive enough. Every time they visited the site, Nadia felt less like a daughter-in-law and more like a walking wallet. Rita never asked how she was doing, never asked about her work. Her questions were always the same. "How's the house? When will it be finished? Why is it taking so long? And I heard the catering for the housewarming is very fancy, right? You can afford it, can't you? Don't embarrass me in front of my friends. The week before the party, preparations reached a fever pitch. Evan and Rita spent every day at Emerald Heights, picking flowers, tasting desserts, arguing over napkin colors. Nadia received none of the fun, only the invoices. Every afternoon, Evan would text her a new list: premium catering, imported flowers, custom-printed invitations for Rita's Diamond Ladies social circle. All Nadia did was approve payments and wire money. The night before the party, she came home exhausted to find Evan and Rita in the living room laughing over fabric samples for the committee uniforms she hadn't even known existed. "Oh, hey, you're back," Evan said, sounding awkward. Rita barely glanced up. "How's everything going?" Nadia asked, setting her work bag down and forcing a smile. "All done," Evan said proudly. "Tomorrow's going to be the party of the year." "Great," Nadia replied quietly. "By the way, I paid the rest of the house today. It's fully settled." For a second, she expected at least a small smile. A thank you, maybe even a hug. Rita didn't even blink. She merely nodded once. "Good. That's how it should be," she said sharply, then turned straight back to Evan. "Now, about the accents. Gold looks more luxurious than silver, don't you think? My guests will be impressed." Nadia felt as if a knife had slid right between her ribs. That's how it should be. So her years of work, the sleepless nights, the millions she'd poured into that house, those weren't generosity, just obligation. Evan noticed her face tighten and rushed to smooth things over. "Right, gold it is, Mom. Nadia, you must be tired. Why don't you shower and rest?" It was his polite way of dismissing her from the conversation. Nadia walked to their bedroom with heavy steps. Why did she keep doing this to herself? Why did she keep trying to buy acceptance from someone who clearly hated her? She left the door to their room slightly open as she changed into her pajamas, needing a second to breathe before facing them again. That was when she heard Evan's voice from the living room, lower than usual, the tone he used when he didn't want her to hear. It sounded like Rita had gone home and he was calling her again. "Yeah, Mom," Evan said. "It's done. She transferred the full amount today." There was a pause. Nadia couldn't hear Rita's words, only the muffled murmur on the other end. Evan laughed softly. "Relax. Our plan's safe. Don't worry. Just make sure everything looks perfect tomorrow. After tonight, well, you know what I have to do." Nadia's heart stopped for a moment. "Our plan. You know what you have to do. What plan? What task?" The unease she'd been pushing aside for months roared back, this time with teeth. She told herself she was overreacting, that she was being paranoid. Maybe they were talking about some surprise for her. Maybe it was nothing. But the conspiratorial tone in Evan's voice made her skin crawl. The next morning, party day, she woke up with dread curling in her stomach. The celebration at Emerald Heights was supposed to start at 7. Instead of excitement, all she felt was something heavy and cold pressing on her chest. She tried to talk to Evan over breakfast, but he was already in a rush. "I have to help Mom set up," he said, hopping on one foot as he pulled on his shoes. "You just focus on your boutique. No need to tire yourself out." Nadia stood in the doorway. "I'll come with you. I can help check the catering or something." Evan froze, then turned with an unreadable expression. "No, it's fine. It's already crowded there. You're the guest of honor, remember? Just come tonight. Look beautiful, show up, and everyone will be happy." He kissed her forehead quickly and was gone before she could answer. Guest of honor, she thought bitterly. What kind of guest of honor doesn't even know what's happening at her own party? What kind of guest of honor pays for everything? At work, Nadia couldn't focus on anything. The rose gold gown she had designed for herself hung in the corner of her private office, its lace catching the light. She had paired it with a matching silk hijab, wanting to look perfect. Not for Rita's friends, but for Evan. She had even ordered a special housewarming gift, a custom calligraphy painting of a verse about gratitude framed in carved oak. By 4 in the afternoon, she closed her laptop early and headed home. On the way, she tried calling Evan. "Hey, what time are you picking me up? Or should I drive myself? Are our outfits matching?" The phone rang and rang. No answer. She sent a message. Double gray check marks. No reply. Nadia forced herself to stay calm. "He's busy," she muttered. "Of course he's busy." She tried calling Rita just to ask if there was anything else they needed. The call rang twice, then abruptly cut off. When she tried again, it went straight to voicemail. Blocked? No, she told herself. She's older. Maybe she pressed the wrong button. She repeated that excuse like a mantra, even as her pulse sped up. At 6, she showered, prayed, and sat at her vanity, applying a soft, elegant makeup look. Her hands trembled faintly. She tried Evan again. Straight to voicemail. Just like Rita. Something was very, very wrong. By 7:30, the party should have been in full swing. Nadia sat on the edge of her bed in her robe, the rose gold gown still hanging untouched. The expensive calligraphy gift lay on the comforter, wrapped in ivory paper and ribbon. She felt like the world's biggest fool, dressed up, made up, ready to attend a party she had paid for, yet unsure she was even welcome. Finally, she picked up her phone and opened their message thread. If Evan wouldn't answer a call, he couldn't ignore a direct question forever. "I'm ready," she typed slowly. "I'm leaving now." She hit send. 2 gray ticks appeared instantly. She stared at the screen, waiting for them to turn blue. 1 minute passed, then 5. The phone felt heavy in her hand, as if it knew the response would break something she could never fix again. The ticking of the wall clock in the living room sounded like a hammer in the silence. At 7:45, her phone buzzed so hard it nearly slipped from her fingers. A new message from Evan popped up. Just one line. One single sentence that gathered every fear she'd tried to deny, every insult she'd swallowed, every sacrifice she'd made, and lit them all on fire. "You don't need to come tonight. My mom doesn't want you here." Nadia read it once, twice, 3 times. The words didn't make sense at first, as if they were in a foreign language. The phone slid from her hand into her lap, landing on the satin of her pajama pants. In the mirror, she saw a beautiful woman in a perfectly applied headscarf with suddenly empty eyes. The rose gold gown in the wardrobe seemed to mock her. The expensive calligraphy on the bed turned into a monument to her own stupidity. The first wave was pure pain, sharp and physical, like someone squeezing her heart in a fist. "His mother doesn't want you here." Not, "Sorry, something came up." Not, "Can we reschedule?" Just a clean, deliberate rejection. And Evan had typed it, hit send, and set his phone down, probably going back to laugh with guests in the house she had just finished paying off. In a rush, every puzzle piece clicked together, his whispered call the night before. "Our plan is safe. You know what you have to do." That was his task. His job was to make sure she was out of the picture the moment her money was no longer needed. The house was paid. The party was covered. Nadia, the human ATM, was now just an inconvenience. Memories crashed over her, canceling a crucial business trip to Paris because Rita had a mild cold and needed her, only to realize her mother-in-law just wanted to show off that her businesswoman daughter-in-law could be ordered around like staff. Covering Evan's failed cafe venture with her emergency funds, never hearing a single "thank you," only "why didn't you invest more? It would have worked if you'd given us a bigger budget." The snide comments about her hijab. "You look like an old lady from the mosque." The digs about being too busy working to remember you're a woman. The cruel whispers about her being barren after 2 years of marriage when she was the one delaying pregnancy to stabilize their finances. She had swallowed it all for love. She had told herself Evan was just stuck between his wife and his mother, that deep down he was on her side. But this text was proof. He wasn't stuck. He had chosen, and he hadn't chosen her. Tears burned hot at the corners of her eyes. For a second she wanted to scream, to smash the mirror, to sob until she couldn't breathe. But as she looked at her own reflection, at the woman who had built a company from nothing, who negotiated with foreign executives and stared them down without flinching, something inside her snapped into place. The tears stopped right at the rim of her lashes. The raw ache in her chest cooled, hardening into something else. Not numbness, not exactly. Clarity. She wasn't just a wounded wife. She was an investor who had just discovered Her investment was rotten. And what does a smart investor do with a rotten asset? She cuts her losses. Nadia picked up her phone, read Evan's message one last time, not with hurt, but with disgust. Then she typed her reply, 2 small words that would lull him into thinking he'd won. "Okay, babe." She hit send, set the phone down on her vanity, and walked to her work desk. In the corner of the bedroom stood another phone, sleek and black, heavier in her hand. Her business phone. Its lock screen lit up with a photo of her at a company event, smiling confidently beside her team. This was the real Nadia, CEO, decision-maker, the woman who held the keys to multiple accounts and contracts. She took a long breath, exhaled slowly, and scrolled to her first speed dial contact, Mr. Harris, her private banker of 5 years. "Good evening, Mr. Harris," she said when he picked up, his deep voice warm but curious. "Sorry to call after hours. I have several urgent instructions that need to be executed tonight." The tremor in her voice was gone. What remained was crisp, icy authority. "Of course, Miss Nadia," he replied immediately, sensing the gravity. "I'm at my desk. What do you need?" "First," Nadia said, "I want every auto debit and scheduled transfer from any of my personal accounts to Emerald Heights Developments or any account connected to Unit A12 canceled, effective immediately. That includes utilities, monthly fees, anything." She heard him tap rapidly on his keyboard. "Understood. I'll cancel all scheduled payments to Emerald Heights and related accounts," he confirmed. "Anything else?" "Yes," she said. "This is the main one. The final transfer I made this afternoon, $350,000. I know the funds have already hit the developer's account, but I need the legal status of the sale. Whose name is on the purchase agreement?" Papers rustled. "Let me see. Here we are. The buyer on record is Mrs. Rita Collins, with you, Ms. Nadia Collins, listed as the sole guarantor and primary payer. All funds originated from your accounts." Nadia's lips curled in a humorless smile. "Perfect. Mr. Harris, I want you to immediately escalate this to your legal department. I want that transaction frozen. I am withdrawing my consent to this purchase. You can tell them I'm alleging fraud, coercion, undue influence. Pick whatever wording gives you the most leverage. I will not sign a single document for the handover of that property. I want the house flagged as legally disputed." There was a pause. "Ms. Nadia, that's complicated," he said carefully. "The money has already been transferred, undoing a completed settlement." "I know it's complicated," she cut in, her tone sharp but controlled. "I don't pay your bank to handle simple things, Mr. Harris. I am a priority client, and my priority tonight is to create a legal roadblock so that house cannot quietly change hands. Do whatever you must. I'll cooperate fully with any investigation, but I am not financing my own humiliation." Another pause, then a different kind of tone, respect. "Understood," he said. "I'll contact legal right away and get back to you by email within the hour." "Good," Nadia replied. "Last thing for now. All supplementary credit cards under my primary account, cards in the name of Evan Collins and Rita Collins, I want them permanently blocked. Not frozen, cancelled. Shred them, effective 10 minutes ago." This time, Mr. Harris didn't hesitate. "That I can do immediately. Consider them cancelled, Miss Nadia." "Email confirmations for everything," she said. "Tonight." She ended the call, then scrolled to the next contact. Mr. Sawyer, Senior Sales Manager at Emerald Heights. They'd met several times over contract drafts and showroom tours. "Ms. Nadia," he answered cheerfully. "Happy housewarming night. I assume the party is—" "Mr. Sawyer," she cut in, switching her tone to one of controlled panic just enough to jolt him. "We have a serious problem. I'm the guarantor and sole payer for Unit A12, correct?" "Yes, absolutely," he said at once. 100% of the funds came from you. Is something wrong?" "I've just learned that my husband and his mother have been conspiring to take that house behind my back," Nadia said, letting her voice shake a little. "I never agreed to hand over the keys to Rita. I transferred the last payment this afternoon under pressure. I'm informing you formally that I'm withdrawing my consent. I'll be filing a legal dispute over that property first thing in the morning. But the money is in, and the party is happening right now," Mr. Sawyer stammered. "Your husband said—" "Exactly," she snapped. "There's a full-blown party going on in a house that legally isn't theirs yet. I expect your security and legal team at that property tonight. I want the status of that unit frozen. If your company hands over the keys to my mother-in-law while I am contesting the transaction, I will include Emerald Heights developments in my lawsuit for colluding and fraud." Silence. Then the faint sound of someone sitting up straighter. "Please calm down, Miss Nadia," he said quickly. "I'll dispatch security and legal to the site immediately and put a hold on the handover. We'll treat the property as under dispute until this is resolved." "I'll be waiting for your update," she replied, and ended the call. The third call was to her own company. "Good evening, Mr. Andrews," she said when her operations manager answered. "Sorry for the late call." "No problem at all, ma'am," he replied, instantly alert. "What can I do for you?" "I need you to prepare a termination of executive privileges for Mr. Evan Collins," Nadia said calmly. "The white SUV with the company plates is registered under our corporate name, correct?" "Yes, ma'am. It's listed as a director's facility vehicle for your husband. Effective tomorrow morning, it's no longer his," she said. "Send a team at 9 sharp to collect the car wherever it is. His corporate salary account is to be frozen as well. As of tonight, he is no longer employed by this company in any capacity. I'll have legal send the formal paperwork in the morning." There was a brief intake of breath on the other end, then a steady, "Understood, ma'am. We'll handle it." Nadia placed the business phone on her desk. 3 calls, 45 minutes. In less than an hour, she had quietly detonated the foundation of the comfortable new life Evan and Rita thought they were about to enjoy. She walked back to the bathroom, ignoring the gown, ignoring the wrapped gift. She slipped out of her satin pajamas and turned on the hot water in the bathtub, sprinkling in a lavender bath bomb. As the tub filled with fragrant steam, she slid in, letting the warmth wrap around her aching muscles. At 8:10, from the bedroom, her personal phone began to shriek, vibrating across the glass surface of the vanity. "Evan, calling." The call rang out, then stopped. A second later, "Rita, calling." Then Evan again, "Rita again." Over and over the device rattled and sang, turning the quiet room into a storm of desperate noise. Nadia closed her eyes, leaning her head against the porcelain edge, a small smile tugging at her lips. She didn't reach for the phone. Let them panic. This was only the beginning. For the first time in months, she felt herself relaxing. Tonight, she would sleep well. Across town, the new house in Emerald Heights blazed with light. Crystal chandeliers cast glittering reflections on imported marble floors. White lilies and roses cascaded from every corner, filling the air with a sweet perfume. Soft instrumental music floated through the rooms, weaving between bursts of laughter and the clink of champagne flutes. Non-alcoholic, of course, but poured into tall, elegant glasses for show. Rita was the undisputed star of the evening. Dressed in a custom-beaded gown with a carefully wrapped scarf, her face heavily made up and glowing with triumph, she held court in the center of a circle of jeweled women she called her Diamond Club. "Rita, is this a house or a palace?" one of them exclaimed, her wrists jangling with gold bangles. "You've outdone yourself, darling." "Oh, it's nothing," Rita replied, waving a hand in fake modesty, making sure her new diamond ring caught the light. "Evan knows how to make his mother happy." "Your son is such a good boy," another woman chimed in, "and so lucky to have married that businesswoman." "What's her name? Nadia, right? I heard her company is huge." For a split second, Rita's face tightened, but she quickly smoothed it over with a brittle smile. Yes, Nadia works hard," she said, in a tone that somehow made "works hard" sound like an accusation. "But of course, Evan is the brains behind it all. Without him, she'd be nothing." Across the room, Evan stood with a group of men basking in the compliments drifting his way. He checked his watch. Nearly 8. It had been half an hour since he'd sent that last text to Nadia. Her brief, "Okay, babe," had been a relief. No drama. No tears. She'd accepted it, just like always. He could finally relax and enjoy the party, convinced he had everything under control. A doting mother, a rich wife, a brand new house. For a man who had never built anything himself, he felt strangely powerful. That illusion lasted until the catering manager walked up to him, holding a tablet and wearing a strained smile. "Good evening, Mr. Collins. Sorry to interrupt. As per our agreement, the remaining 50% of the catering bill is due tonight during the event." Of course, Evan said lightly. He'd been expecting this. He pulled out his platinum credit card, the supplementary one Nadia had given him, with a comforting sense of entitlement. Here you go. Run it on this. The manager, Tony, slid the card into the portable reader. A few seconds later, his brows knitted. I'm sorry, sir. It's been declined. Evan's smile faltered. Declined? That's impossible. Try again. Maybe the signal's bad. Tony tried again. Same result. Still declined, sir. The message says, transaction denied. A nearby group of guests fell quiet, their eyes discreetly drifting over. Evan felt a flush crawl up his neck. I have another card, he muttered, pulling out a sleek black metal card, another supplementary from Nadia's account. Use this one. Tony swiped it. The machine beeped. I'm really sorry, Mr. Collins, he said, this time with less warmth. This one is blocked. Card cancelled. What? Evan snapped, his voice rising. That's ridiculous. Run it again. Tony's polite smile vanished. Sir, the total due is $10,000. Our company has very clear policies. If payment isn't completed, we have to stop service. Rita, hearing the raised voices, swept over, frowning. What's going on? She demanded. Why does Mr. Tony look upset? His card was declined, ma'am, Tony said bluntly. The remaining catering bill hasn't been paid. Rita's eyes bulged. What? Evan, why isn't it paid? Where is your wife? Why hasn't she handled this? Before Evan could stammer out a lie, the music abruptly cut off. The room fell into an uneasy silence as everyone turned toward the front door. 3 men in dark suits stood there, serious and unsmiling. They weren't guests. The one in the middle, Mr. Sawyer, stepped forward. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the room. I apologize for interrupting your celebration. My name is Daniel Sawyer, from Emerald Heights Developments. I'm looking for Mrs. Rita Collins and Mr. Evan Collins. Every face turned toward them. Evan felt suddenly exposed, as if a spotlight had pinned him to the floor. What's going on, Mr. Sawyer? He asked, his voice shaky. Is there a problem? There's a very serious administrative issue, Mr. Sawyer replied, striding closer. We have just received notification from the bank and from our legal department. The primary payer and guarantor for this property, Ms. Nadia Collins, has withdrawn her consent for this transaction. What? Rita shrieked. What do you mean withdrawn? The house is paid off. My daughter-in-law already paid it. That's precisely the issue, ma'am, Mr. Sawyer said, his tone turning cool. She paid for it, and she is now contesting it. Ms. Collins is alleging fraud and coercion. She claims she never agreed to hand over the keys to you. At her request, the bank has frozen the funds transferred this afternoon. Legally, this property is now under dispute. For a heartbeat, you could have heard ice melting in someone's glass. Under dispute? Rita whispered, her face draining of color. So, what does that mean? It means this party is over, Mr. Sawyer said firmly. For legal reasons, we must ask all guests to vacate the premises immediately. The house will be sealed until the matter is resolved. Chaos erupted. The same women who had been singing Rita's praises minutes ago grabbed their designer clutches and hustled toward the exit, whispering furiously to each other. Some didn't bother to hide their smirks. The glamorous event of the year had just turned into the scandal of the decade. This is insane, Evan shouted. He snatched his phone from his pocket and dialed Nadia. It rang, no answer. He called again, voicemail. Pick up, Nadia, he hissed. Pick up. Rita lunged for his arm. Let me call her, she snapped. She's afraid of me. She dialed. The first call was rejected. The second went straight to voicemail. Back in Nadia's apartment, her personal phone vibrated violently on the vanity, lighting up over and over with Evan calling and Rita calling. Sitting on the couch in soft cotton pajamas, hair wrapped in a towel, Nadia glanced at the glowing screen and then back at her steaming mug of ginger tea. She lifted the cup to her lips and took a slow sip, savoring the warmth. The phone screamed. She let it. At Emerald Heights, the caterers, following Tony's signal, began clearing the buffet with ruthless efficiency. Platters of untouched lamb, shrimp, and salmon were covered and wheeled away. Flower arrangements were dismantled, vases carried out. Tablecloths were stripped, leaving bare tables that suddenly looked cheap under the harsh lights. Hey, you can't take the food, Rita yelled, her voice cracking. That's ours. Not until it's paid for, ma'am, Tony said flatly. Per our contract, in case of non-payment, all remaining goods and services revert to us. Staff unplugged coffee machines and boxed up everything that wasn't nailed down. In the foyer, Mr. Sawyer's team unrolled a bright orange notice and stuck it across the massive oak front door. Sealed. Legal dispute. A security guard snapped a heavy padlock onto the front gate. "You have 5 minutes to collect any personal items," he told Rita and Evan. "After that, you must leave the property." They had nothing there yet, not even a toothbrush, only their shredded pride. 10 minutes later, the lights inside the house flicked off. Rita and Evan found themselves standing on the sidewalk outside the iron gate, still in their glittering evening clothes, illuminated cruelly by the garden lights. Car after car sped away, none stopping to offer a ride. For nearly half an hour, no taxi would pick them up. Drivers slowed, took in the scene, crying woman, furious man, sealed mansion behind them, and drove on. Finally, an app driver agreed to come. The ride was suffocatingly silent at first. Evan sat in the front, gripping his dead phone, firing off message after message that went unanswered. Rita slumped in the back, her gown rumpled, her scarf crooked, staring blankly out the window. The driver glanced at them in the rearview mirror, sensed the tension, and wisely kept quiet. "So, where to?" he asked eventually as they approached the freeway. Evan hesitated. "Home." But which home? The cramped old house Rita hated with every breath, or Nadia's penthouse? "We're going to see Nadia," Rita rasped from the back seat, her voice raw. "She has to fix this. She has to cancel whatever she's done." Evan nodded quickly. "Harbor Heights Residences, please," he told the driver. In his mind, it was simple. Nadia loved him. She was emotional, but soft. If he yelled a little, apologized a little, maybe cried a little, she would fold like always. She always did. When they arrived at the gleaming tower where Nadia lived, the first problem appeared at the lobby door. Evan tapped his access card against the reader. Red light. Access denied. He tried again. Red. "What now?" Rita snapped. "My card isn't working," he muttered. "It must be a glitch." A security guard approached. "Good evening, Mr. Collins," he said politely. "I'm afraid your access card has been deactivated at the owner's request." "Owner?" Evan barked. "I'm her husband. I still need to call Ms. Nadia to ask if you're allowed up," the guard replied calmly. "Those are the rules." Humiliation burned through Rita. To be kicked out of her dream house and now forced to ask permission like a stranger to enter the apartment she had always treated as hers. This was a new level of insult. The guard picked up the lobby phone. "Good evening, Ms. Nadia. Security here. Mr. Evan and Mrs. Rita are in the lobby. Do you authorize them to come up?" There was a long pause. Evan held his breath. If Nadia refused, they were finished. Finally, her voice came through, clear and steady. "Let them up," she said. "I'll be waiting." Evan practically dragged his suitcases into the elevator, Rita hobbling behind him. When they reached the penthouse floor, the apartment door was slightly ajar. Evan didn't bother knocking. He shoved it open. "What the hell is all this, Nadia?" he shouted as he stepped inside. The sight that greeted him stopped him cold. Nadia wasn't crumpled on the couch, crying. She wasn't pacing the floor, panicking. She was sitting calmly on the sofa, wrapped in soft pajamas, her damp hair tucked under a fresh hijab. A mug of tea steamed on the coffee table in front of her. Her posture was relaxed, her expression unreadable. She looked like a woman who had just finished a spa day, not someone who had supposedly blown up her own life. "Sit down," she said quietly. Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake. "Both of you." "Sit down?" Rita exploded, storming forward. "You dare tell us to sit after what you did? Do you have any idea how you humiliated us tonight? You evil, ungrateful girl?" "Nadia, this is insane," Evan cut in, voice pitching high with anger and fear. "You embarrassed me and Mom in front of everyone. You canceled my cards. You got the house sealed. Are you out of your mind? Call your bank. Call the developer. Tell them it was a mistake. Fix it." Nadia studied his face, searching for even a flicker of remorse, of realization. She found only panic and self-pity. "Out of my mind?" she repeated softly. "Tell me, Evan, am I crazy for working myself sick to buy your mother a mansion? Or are you too insane for living off my money while plotting to erase me from the picture?" Evan opened his mouth, then closed it. I embarrassed you? Nadia went on, a cold laugh escaping her. Your mother texted me that she didn't want me at her party. I stayed home, just like you asked. I simply took back what was mine. Yours? Rita shrieked. Nothing is yours. Everything you have is because of my son. Without Evan, you'd be nothing. All your money is his money. It's my son's money. Nadia turned to her, the faint smile vanishing. Let's talk facts, shall we? She said. I started my company 6 years before I even met Evan. I bought this apartment 2 years before our wedding. Every car in the garage is registered to my company. And that house in Emerald Heights, every single dollar came out of my accounts. So please point to the exact spot where your son's contributions begin. Rita's jaw worked soundlessly. Nadia, stop. Evan broke in, switching tactics, his voice softening. Okay, I messed up. I'm sorry I sent that text. Mom pushed me. You know how she is, but you didn't have to go this far. Please, say it was a misunderstanding. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, Nadia replied, standing up. That text wasn't a mistake. It was finally the truth. And it opened my eyes. She walked to the hallway and returned, kicking lightly at 2 large suitcases and a travel bag lined up neatly by the door. Evan recognized them instantly. His. I'm done, she said. I'm done with this marriage. I'm done being your walking wallet. Those are your things. At least what I could fit into luggage. Your designer suits, your watches, your shoes. The rest can be shipped later or burned. I don't really care. Evan stared at the suitcases, then back at her, horror dawning. You're kicking me out? I'm not kicking you out, Nadia corrected calmly. I'm simply returning you to your natural habitat. This apartment is mine. I paid for it. I won't share it with a man who betrayed me and a woman who has never seen me as anything but a bank. Thief! Rita screamed. You're stealing my son. You're... Stealing? Nadia snapped back, her patience finally cracking. You stole my peace, my time, my money. You tried to steal my dignity tonight, and you failed. She took a step closer. Now, you're going to walk out that door, or I'll call security and have them escort you out. Evan reached for her hand, desperate. Nadia, please, don't do this. Don't ruin our marriage. We can talk, we can go to counseling, we can... She jerked her hand away, as if his touch burned. Don't touch me, she said sharply. Your company car is being collected at 9 tomorrow. Your corporate salary is frozen. And tomorrow morning, my lawyer will deliver divorce papers to you. Oh, and one more thing. Her mouth curved into a small, hard smile. You and your mother are welcome to live in your new house. I hear it has stunning marble floors. She paused. If you can get past the sealed legal dispute sign on the door. She opened the apartment door wide, the hallway beyond gleaming under soft lights. Out, she said simply. Rita lunged, shoving toward her. You can't do this to my son. Nadia caught her wrist in a grip far stronger than either of them expected. The softness in her expression was gone, replaced by steel. Do not ever put your hands on me in my own home, she said through her teeth. Walk out now, or I will have security drag you out in front of all your old neighbors. Something in her eyes made even Rita hesitate. With a strangled noise, the older woman stumbled back. Evan, hands shaking, grabbed the suitcase handles. He looked at Nadia one last time, hoping to find some hint of the woman who used to melt at his apologies. All he saw was a wall. He and Rita stepped over the threshold. Good night, Evan, Nadia said quietly. Good night, Mrs. Collins. Then she closed the door with a final decisive click. A second later came the sound of the deadbolt sliding into place. Evan and Rita stood in the silent hallway, surrounded by polished walls and soft lighting that suddenly felt cold. Beside them, the expensive luggage looked ridiculous, like props in the wrong scene. Evan slammed his fist lightly against the wall. Nadia, he shouted, open the door, we can work this out. No answer, just the hum of the air conditioning. Eventually, they dragged the suitcases back into the elevator and down to the street, feeling smaller with every floor they passed. That night was the longest of their lives. They had nowhere to go but the small, old house on the edge of the city that Rita had always called a shack. A hotel was out of the question. Evan's cards were dead and the cash in his wallet barely covered the taxi. They arrived past midnight to a house that smelled of dust and abandonment. Rita, still in her ruined gown, erupted the moment they stepped inside. "This is your fault," she screamed. "If you'd been a real man, you wouldn't have let her do this. If you hadn't relied on her money, we'd still have our dignity." "You're the one who pushed for the house, Mom," Evan shouted back, dropping the suitcases with a thud. "You're the one who told me to send that text. You said you didn't want her there." "Because she's arrogant," Rita snapped. "Because she needed to be put in her place." They shouted at each other until their throats burned, surrounded by aging furniture and peeling paint, their voices echoing in a space that suddenly felt far too small for their pride. That night they slept in cramped rooms, backs turned, each blaming the other, neither ready to face the person they really needed to blame. Morning brought no relief. Evan woke to the sound of an engine outside. He stumbled to the window just in time to see two men in company jackets parked beside his precious white SUV. By the time he reached the front door, they were already checking the license plate against a clipboard. "Mr. Evan Collins?" one of them asked. "We're here on behalf of Collins Couture Limited to retrieve the company vehicle assigned to you. Here's the paperwork." The letter was signed with Nadia's name. Evan argued, threatened, begged, but it didn't matter. Within minutes, he was left standing in the driveway, watching the car he'd once used to impress people disappear down the street. Later that morning, a courier arrived with two thick envelopes. One bore the logo of Emerald Heights Developments, addressed to Rita. The other, heavier, was from a prestigious law firm, addressed to Evan. Rita ripped her envelope open first. Her eyes scanned the official letter, then widened in horror. The developer was formally notifying her that due to a legal dispute initiated by the primary payer, the purchase agreement for the house had been cancelled. The property remained under the developer's ownership. Most of the initial deposit would be forfeited as penalty and to cover the costs of the aborted event. The dream house was gone. "My house," Rita whispered, swaying, clutching the doorframe. "My house." Evan barely heard her. His hands were trembling as he pulled out page after page from his own envelope. At the top, petition for dissolution of marriage. The document was meticulous. Nadia was filing for divorce on grounds of emotional abuse, financial exploitation, and deception by both him and his family. Attached were dozens of exhibits, bank statements showing vast transfers from her accounts to his and Rita's, proof of payments for the house, invoices for the party, corporate records showing that all major assets had been acquired before their marriage. Nadia was requesting a clear separation of assets. Everything she had brought in and built remained hers. As for anything he'd enjoyed under her company's name, her lawyers categorized it as debt to be repaid. Evan sank onto the front step, pages slipping from his fingers onto the dusty floor. He wasn't just losing his wife. He was losing the illusion of being a successful executive, the fancy car, the access to money that had never really been his. "What is it?" Rita demanded, grabbing the top page. She didn't understand all the legal terms, but she understood divorce and financial restitution. Her shock quickly morphed into rage. "No," she hissed. "She can't do this. She still loves you. She's just angry. We'll make her forgive us." "Mom, did you even read this?" Evan muttered. "She's done. She's not coming back." "Then we'll make her," Rita said, her eyes narrowing as a desperate idea formed. "We'll go to her office. I'll kneel. I'll cry. She's religious. She wears that scarf. She must have a conscience. She won't be able to stand seeing her mother-in-law beg." It wasn't repentance, it was another performance. But they were out of options. That afternoon, in rumpled clothes and forced expressions of misery, Rita and Evan arrived at the sleek glass lobby of Nadia's company. The receptionist looked them up and down, then glanced at her screen. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. "We're here to see Nadia," Evan said stiffly. "I'm her husband." She checked something on her monitor. "I'm sorry, sir. Ms. Collins is in a meeting. And I should inform you, your names are on the restricted list. You're not allowed beyond the lobby." "Restricted?" Evan exploded. "In my wife's company?" Before the argument could escalate, the elevator chimed. Nadia stepped out, flanked by two managers. Dressed in a tailored navy blazer and matching trousers, she looked every inch the accomplished executive. There were faint shadows under her eyes, but her posture was straight, her expression composed. She was smiling at something her colleague had said until she saw them. Rita didn't waste a second. She lurched forward and collapsed theatrically at Nadia's feet, grabbing at her ankles. "Nadia, my daughter," she wailed, her voice echoing through the lobby. "Forgive me. Forgive your mother. I was wrong." She clung to Nadia's legs, sobbing loudly. People stopped in their tracks, phones subtly lifted to record. "Please don't divorce Evan. He's suffering. Look at us. We're suffering. Have mercy." Evan stood behind her, wearing his best wounded expression. Nadia stopped. The smile slid from her face. She looked down at the woman weeping on the polished floor, then up at Evan. There was no pity in her eyes, only a deep, weary revulsion. She exhaled slowly, then spoke, not to them, but to her manager. "Mr. Andrews, call security." "Nadia, it's me," Rita cried, tightening her grip. "I'm your mother." Nadia crouched slightly, not to help her up, but to meet her gaze. "You are not my mother," she said calmly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "My mother taught me dignity and honesty. You taught me how far some people will go for money." She straightened. "This little performance is over." 2 security guards arrived, looking uncomfortable but firm. "Ma'am," one of them asked Nadia, "please escort these 2 out of the building," she said, "and make a note. They are never to set foot inside my company again." "Yes, ma'am." The guards gently but firmly pried Rita's hands from Nadia's legs. "No!" Rita shrieked, her tears vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. "You'll regret this, you ungrateful girl. You'll grow old alone. You'll have no children to cry over your grave." Her curses were cut off as the glass doors swung shut behind her. Nadia smoothed her blazer, turned to her managers, and said in the same tone she'd used to discuss quarterly reports, "Now, where were we?" The elevator doors closed, carrying her back up to her office, away from the chaos she had finally chosen to leave behind. The months that followed were pure hell for Evan and Rita. Word of the disastrous housewarming, the sealed mansion, and the public scene at Nadia's office spread faster than any press release. The Diamond Club ladies who had once flocked around Rita stopped inviting her anywhere. In fact, they seemed to relish using her as a cautionary tale. "Did you hear about Rita lawsuit?" one of them whispered at a brunch. "Tried to show off with a house her daughter-in-law paid for. Ended up with a foreclosure notice instead." "Serves her right," another replied. "That's what happens when you flex on other people with borrowed money." For someone like Rita, who had lived off gossip and admiration, the social death was worse than losing the house. She locked herself in her bedroom for days, refusing to see anyone. Her blood pressure spiked. Her diabetes worsened. The glamorous woman who once swept into parties in sparkling gowns now shuffled around the small, stuffy house in faded nightgowns, complaining and crying in equal measure. Evan fared no better. The savings they'd had, mostly remnants of Nadia's generosity, vanished quickly under the weight of basic bills and Rita's medication. He started job hunting in earnest, sending out resume after resume. On paper, he looked impressive, former marketing director of a major fashion exporter. In reality, he had never managed a single campaign on his own. Interviewers saw it within minutes. "So, Mr. Collins," one HR manager said, scanning his CV, "you claim you increased export sales by 200%. Can you walk me through your strategy for the European market? What data did you analyze? Which channels perform best?" Evan stammered. "Well, I worked hard, checked trends, followed what people liked online." The manager smiled politely and closed the folder. "Thank you for coming in. We'll be in touch." He never was. As the rejections piled up, Evan lowered his expectations. Director roles to manager, manager to supervisor, supervisor to entry level. Still nothing. Finally, with his pride in tatters, he took whatever he could get, driving for a rideshare company with a rented car whose daily fees ate most of his earnings. The man who had once boasted about his company car now spent 12 hours a day in a beat-up sedan that smelled of stale smoke, praying for enough fares to cover gas and a cheap dinner. Home became a battleground. "Where's the money?" Rita would shout from her bed. "My medicine is almost finished. Can't you even provide for your own mother? Do you think money falls from the sky?" Evan would snap back, slamming his keys on the table. "I've been driving since dawn, and I barely made enough for groceries." "When Nadia was here, we never had to worry," Rita would wail. "You ruined everything." The mention of Nadia's name made something twist painfully inside him. "I ruined it," he'd yell. "Who pushed me to keep asking for more? Who told me to send that text?" "Don't you dare blame me," Rita would shriek. "You're the man. You should have controlled your wife." Their arguments became a daily ritual, each accusation another brick in the wall between them. They began selling off what little they had of value. An old watch, a few pieces of jewelry, even some of Rita's beloved but fake designer bags. Pride had no resale value. The divorce moved quickly. Nadia's lawyers were thorough, her documentation flawless. The judge granted every major point she requested. All assets clearly proven to be hers remained hers. The court accepted that Evan had contributed little to the creation of the wealth in question and had in fact benefited disproportionately from it. Any joint savings were minimal and split fairly. Evan walked out of the courthouse with a thin folder and a thick sense of loss. He wasn't just divorced. He'd been stripped of the borrowed identity he'd worn like an expensive suit. Nadia, on the other hand, left the proceedings with her head held high. For the first time in years, she felt light. She threw herself into her two great loves, her business and her own happiness. Free from the constant drain of a toxic marriage and manipulative in-laws, her company flourished. The eco-friendly clothing line she launched, a collection made from recycled fabrics and sustainably sourced materials, caught fire in European markets. She signed a record-breaking export deal with a major brand in Milan, opened 2 new factories, and hired hundreds more workers. One sweltering afternoon, after a long, unprofitable day of driving, Evan parked his rental car in the shade and mindlessly scrolled through his phone. A viral interview from a popular business talk show filled his screen. There she was, Nadia, on stage in a sleek white suit, hijab pinned neatly, eyes bright. "Congratulations," the host was saying. "We hear your company just secured the biggest eco-fashion export contract of the year. That's incredible." Nadia smiled, serene. "Thank God," she said. "It's been a long journey, but it's all thanks to my amazing team." "You're an inspiration," the host continued. "You've been through a very public personal struggle recently, yet you seem lighter than ever. What's your secret?" Nadia laughed softly. "I wouldn't call it a struggle," she replied. "I'd call it a cleansing. Sometimes you have to take out the trash so your house can be clean again. My secret is simple. Focus on what you can control and let go of anything or anyone that only weighs you down." Evan stabbed at the screen, shutting the video off, but the words kept echoing in his head. Trash. Weight. That's what he and Rita had become in her eyes. Garbage she finally decided to throw out. For the first time, his anger wasn't aimed at her. It turned inward. He saw, with painful clarity, how he had squandered something rare. He hadn't married a walking wallet. He'd married a diamond, and traded her respect and love for a house that was never his and a status that evaporated the moment her money did. Now she sat under studio lights, respected and admired, while he sat in a hot, grimy car with an empty stomach and a life in ruins. A year passed from the night of the doomed housewarming. For Evan and Rita, it was 12 months of slow collapse. For Nadia, it was 365 days of rebuilding and rising. 6 months earlier, the divorce had been finalized. The judge's gavel had come down, the last papers were signed, and the names Nadia and Evan Collins officially separated. The world moved on. Nadia did too. To mark both her company's growth and what she privately called her freedom anniversary, she decided to host a celebration, but not at a luxury ballroom or a showy mansion. She chose a large orphanage on the edge of the city, one that also housed a small nursing home she had been quietly supporting for years. The main hall was decorated simply but joyfully. Strings of colorful balloons, paper garlands made by the children, a giant cone of yellow rice surrounded by dishes from a local home-based caterer run by a widowed mother Nadia had mentored. Her guests of honor weren't socialites draped in diamonds, but children in mismatched clothes and elderly men and women with kind, lined faces. Nadia wore a simple, flowing white dress and a soft pastel hijab. She sat cross-legged on the floor with the kids, laughing as a little girl tried to feed her a spoonful of rice. There was no pretense here, no one to impress, just genuine smiles and grateful hearts. When it was time for a short speech, Nadia stood at the front of the room, microphone in hand, looking out at the sea of small faces and gentle eyes. "I stand here today," she said, "not as a CEO or a guest of honor, but as a servant of God who wants to say thank you. This past year has taught me so much about letting go." She glanced around, her gaze soft. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is release what hurts you. Let go of the past. Let go of people who poison your spirit, because only with empty hands can you receive new blessings. The hall fell quiet as a caregiver led a closing prayer, voices rising together in a humble chorus. Nadia handed over a folder to the orphanage director, a donation large enough to fund a full renovation of the building and expand the nursing home wing. Tears streamed down the woman's cheeks as she hugged Nadia, children crowding around them, elders raising their hands in blessing. If you've made it this far into the story, let me know in the comments what you would have done in Nadia's place, and if you believe karma really does come around, tap that like button so more people can hear how this ended. Because while Nadia was surrounded by gratitude and hope, a very different scene was unfolding across town. On the other side of the city, a long line snaked in front of a modest building bearing a faded banner. Free community kitchen, Friday meal. People in worn clothes and tired faces waited patiently, clutching plastic containers and chipped bowls. Among them stood two figures who, despite their threadbare outfits, still carried the ghost of former vanity. An older woman, frail and sickly, her scarf crooked and stained, leaning heavily on a younger man whose shoulders slumped under invisible weight. Rita and Evan. Since Evan had lost even his rideshare gig, the rental car repossessed after he fell behind on payments, they had no steady income at all. They survived on odd jobs, the occasional help from distant relatives, and lately, the charity of strangers. "Move up, Evan," Rita muttered, her voice weak but still carrying that sharp edge. "I'm starving." "We're moving, Mom," he said dully. "Everyone's hungry." "This is your fault," she whispered harshly. "If you hadn't been so stupid, Abba, if you hadn't let her go." "Enough," he said suddenly, not loud, but with a finality that startled even himself. "There's no point blaming anyone anymore. Let's just get the food." Rita opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at the line ahead, at the people whose lives had likely been hard from the start. For the first time, she seemed to realize they weren't any different now. No one here cared who she used to be, what dress she used to wear, whose money she used to spend. She was just another hungry person waiting for a plastic container of rice and soup. By the time they reached the front, Evan's feet ached, his back throbbed, and his pride felt scraped raw. He accepted the warm container with a quiet "thank you," guided his mother to a bench, and sat beside her in silence. He didn't have the energy left to resent Nadia. All he felt was the heavy, simple truth of cause and effect. Back at the orphanage, the sun was dipping lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The celebration had ended, and children were drifting back to their dorms, bellies full and hearts light. Nadia walked slowly through the small garden, enjoying the evening breeze. Her manager approached. "Ma'am, the car is ready," he said. "You have that interview with the International magazine at 5. She nodded. "Thank you," she replied. She paused to look up at the sky, breathing in deeply. She had forgiven Evan and Rita in her heart, not for them, but for herself. She refused to let their bitterness stain the life she was building. As she walked toward her car, a memory flickered. The nights she had stayed up late, eyes burning from spreadsheets, pushing her business harder so she could afford a house for a woman who despised her. She smiled, not with regret, but with a kind of gentle amusement. "I once nearly worked myself to death to buy them a mansion," she thought as she opened the car door and adjusted her hijab in the reflection of the window. "And instead, God handed me something far more valuable. Not a house with marble floors and crystal chandeliers that could be sealed with a sticker and a padlock, but something no one could ever take, a life on her own terms, a palace called freedom." She slid into the back seat, gave the driver a nod, and let the city lights blur past as the car carried her toward a future she was finally writing for herself.